Let's welcome our guest to the top of the tower today, a broadcaster, a best-selling author, a former newspaper editor. He's co-hosted Good Morning Britain. He's been a judge on Britain's Got Talent. He's won the Celebrity Apprentice in the United States. He even got Donald Trump in his phone contacts quite regularly. We'll talk about that. His new book, it's called Woke is Dead, How Common Sense Triumphed in an Age of Total Madness, is out today. Happy publishing day. I always love talking to authors on the day of the publication because it's a huge achievement and it must feel great.
Yeah, it's the premise of the book is that woke is not actually dead yet, but I'm hoping the book will be part of the final killing off process. Because I do think that wokeism, a bit like Elon Musk called it, has become a weird mind virus which infected a lot of people and basically sent them slightly nuts.
Yes.
And we all were sort of compelled, or many people were compelled to go along with it, even if it made absolutely no sense. And it was a very draconian, puritanical, censorious, cancel culture-led ideology, which I felt was very antithetical to liberalism, which is what I always assumed liberals signed up to. It became, in a way, a sort of new form of fascism, which, of course, is the one thing liberals would always say they hate most. So I thought none of it really made much sense. And having written a book called Wake Up 4 years ago as a clarion call to liberals to wake up before it was too late, and then watched the re-election of Donald Trump, who in a way was the ultimate repudiation with that victory for everything the woke world stands for, I thought it was the right time to do another book, just saying, look, you've tried this, it hasn't worked, let's move on.
Loads of places to go with this. One of the theories that I have that I think I'd love to ask you about is that in the world, on the spectrum of life, there's 3% on the far left who are quite mad, 3% on the far right who are quite mad, and there's 94% of us who are just getting on with it.
I agree.
And we're a bit drowned out by both. And I'm not trying to be all things to all men and women.
No, you're right.
But it's just so loud.
Well,
and
remember
so
also on X, formerly Twitter, only about 20% of people are on it, right, to start with, both here and in America. And of the 20% of the population who use it, 10% of people on X make 80% of the noise, and they tend to skew noisy and extreme. So if you're on it, you get an impression that these are the views of the masses, but they're not. They're actually the view of the noisy minority.
And if you stay off this, now that, you know, Twitter or whatever, you're on Instagram, I follow you on Instagram, and you're very active, and it's quite, it's friendly. We'll come to that in a second. But if you're off it, as I'm not on X or Twitter, I left Twitter. I'm still on Instagram, love it. But the point I'm saying is that people will come up to you and go, are you okay? You're getting an awful time on it. I said, what? No, I'm living in the real world. I only meet decent people. The butcher, the people. You know what I'm saying?
The streets are no reflection.
They're no reflection
of X, and X is no reflection of the streets. People are much more Billy Big Balls on Twitter than they'd ever be to your face. I walk around without I don't get any aggro from anyone, and I'm one of the most controversial people supposedly in the world.
That's right.
but actually, I think most people who are not like on that insane extremity, they realise that actually a lot of what I say is just basic common sense. I'm not actually that controversial.
Because when I say to people, Piers Morgan's going to be on the show tomorrow, depending on age group, by the way, because you could have a younger age group who feel that woke is alive and well, and you'll have the older ones who are saying, thank God that's gone, or whatever it might be. They'll say, he's very right-wing, or I don't agree with him. And you'll say, well, have you read the book for starters? And well, certainly have you met him? Not everyone has met you, but people feel that you have a very right of centre approach.
But I've never been right wing.
But and you say
I was editor of the Daily Mirror. I mean, you don't get more non-right wing than that.
So why is that perception?
I think because I express my views stridently. I express myself. I'm not afraid to engage in passionate debate with people. But if you watch my show Uncensored, for example, I don't take ideological party political lines on stuff. I don't consider myself to be left or right. I consider myself to be pretty centrist. I'm a journalist at heart. I like to go after everybody if I think they're wrong, or praise them when they're right.
I thought it was interesting watching your arc on the Gaza story, where you said Israel, right to defend, and then you said, wait a minute, and you came in, and I thought, for those who say he's only one thing, incorrect. Would that be fair?
I try and be intellectually honest, and I would say the same with things like Trump or Brexit or any of the hot button issues of our era. I've always tried to be intellectually honest. On Brexit, I said, look, I don't agree with this. I voted against it, but now the country's voted for it. that has to be respected. You can't have a referendum of the British people and then ignore it. And in fact, the reason I voted for Boris Johnson in 2019 was for one reason only. He was the only candidate in that election who said he would deliver on the result of the referendum, even though the result was not what I wanted. Yeah. That is actually protecting democracy. And I think that, with Israel-Gaza, I do think people will look back and they'll say that Israel absolutely had a fundamental duty to defend itself after the scale of that horrific terror attack on October the 7th, but that the scale of their response was massively disproportionate and became something which was unacceptable. And I think that those two things are not, they're very compatible if you have an intellectually honest view about it. But I've had people on the extremes of both sides, Palestinian and Israeli, who've hammered me when I've gone to either what they perceive to be a side.
It's often the way. I remember in my old chat show days is that when you do a political interview, and I wonder if it's the same for you, that when you have both sides giving out about you, you're doing something right.
Yeah, 100%. And I've gone from being at the start of that war, I was described as a pro-Zionist monster. And then I became a Hamas-supporting monster. Well, you can't actually be both. I mean, if you think about it, those two positions are not comfortable bedfellows. All right. You probably can't be pro-Hamas and be a Zionist monster.
Will you stick around for a few minutes?
Of course.
Piers Morgan, the book is called Woke is Dead. It's one of those books that you could pop down in your local pub to your friends and say, right, we need to Piers Morgan, our guest today, is talking about his book Woke is Dead. I was struck reading your book about the closeness of your relationship to Donald Trump. In my head, you won Celebrity Apprentice in the States, and that was it. You had a loose relationship with him. But in fact, you'd interviewed him many times on CNN when you were followed from Larry King. And you have he phones you, you text each other. You like the guy, even though you're not afraid to say wrong. Yeah. And that opening sequence where the guy comes down to you as you're about to interview and says he's not happy.
Yeah.
Because he got a dossier of all the mean things you said about him.
Sent to him by Nigel Farage.
You described him in the book as in fairness, you describe in the book as a treacherous weasel, but it's followed by and a very good politician. I think.
Well, he's a very good communicator. Yeah, actually, we got on very well before that, but he did try to stitch me up. It failed. But yeah, look, the thing about Trump is I've known him, nearly 20 years now. And I won his Celebrity Apprentice the first season. I did that celebrity version of it in America. And that was great for me. And we became good friends. And he was nowhere near being a politician then. I would go back on each year as one of his boardroom advisors on future seasons. Then I went to CNN, replaced Larry King, interviewed him probably 30 times over the 4 years I was there. And then I've carried on interviewing him. I interviewed him 3 times in his first term as president, including on Air Force One and in the Winston Churchill war rooms at Davos and so on.
You like him?
I do like him, and I find him very entertaining. He's been a very loyal friend in many ways. Like when I left CNN and came back here, I can count on one hand the number of high-profile Americans who bothered to stay in touch. Trump would call me every 3-4 weeks. He'd send me little notes of encouragement. He'd say, "Can I help you? Do you want to put a good word in here? Whatever." He didn't need to do any of that.
So when would you describe him as a word I can't associate with him? Would you tell me he's your friend? Would you describe him as a kind man?
Well, he's definitely capable of kindness.
He's capable of kindness.
Empathy. And I look at certain things with people, like, is he a good father? He's a very good father.
Yeah.
His kids absolutely love him. Is he a good grandfather? Fantastic grandfather. So he's very strong on his family stuff. Is he somebody that, can be impetuous and irrational and can sometimes have very inflammatory rhetoric? Yes. But are the core principles that Trump stands for as a politician, are they that bad? I mean, the reason I say that is that recently The Economist did a poll, and it said that most British people don't like Trump personally, because they don't know him probably. They just know what they see in public, but they quite like Trumpism, and by that. They like the fact he wants a stronger border. They like him being tougher on serious crime. They like the fact he wants to engage in fewer wars. But very unusual for a Republican president, by the way.
You must look at him and you look at the Ukraine situation where he seems to be playing Zelensky for a bit of a twit sometimes, and then he seems to be pandering to Putin.
Yeah, but he's now ratcheting up against Putin with these sanctions overnight.
But not the tomahawks. You know what I mean?
But he might get to the tomahawks. And I think Putin's playing a very dangerous, deluded game if he thinks at some point Trump won't snap with him about this, because he's given him a lot of patience. But I talked to Trump privately about Ukraine. He is passionate about this because he cannot understand why thousands of men on both sides are being killed every week. And he says
that quite a lot. Let me ask you, do you think that Donald Trump would have been elected if wokeism hadn't existed.
Well, I think he played a big part because, in 2016 it was all beginning to rear its ugly head. I think he was able to capitalize on that. Yeah. But, the second time, I got to remember, America had 4 years without Trump as president and then voted him back. Yeah. Nobody thought after January the 6th riots and stuff that would ever happen. I certainly didn't. But actually, the way that the left in America waged this lawfare, as it was put, where they basically tried to imprison him for anything they could think of. And they end up convicting Trump in a criminal court for shuffling paperwork over an alleged porn star affair, one-night stand 20 years before. It was so demeaning for America, for the office of the president, for all of it. Should never have been allowed to happen.
I think they shot themselves in the foot, essentially, by pursuing that.
No question. And they shot him in the ear, right? They tried to assassinate him twice. And, they tried to kill him. They tried to imprison him. They being the left, and I think driven by the progressive woke left who were demented about Trump and remain demented about him, right? And I think there's a balance between the MAGA position, which is Trump can do no wrong, and the demented...
So we're back to our 3 and 3 there.
And the demented position there. And most people in the middle, if you ask them about Trump, they now begin to see good and bad in him.
I wonder, because your channel is... Drop the
Piers Morgan Uncensored.
No, I mean the numbers.
Oh, well, we got 4.2 million subscribers. We have an average of over 1 million views for each piece of content now.
Okay, so my question... I'm sorry for cutting across.
No, cool.
As time is against. But here's my question. If you had not been kicked off Good Morning Britain because of your comments about Meghan Markle, because somebody felt that was offensive to
her... Well, I was kicked off for refusing to apologise.
So, I'm sorry, that's better. If the atmosphere around hadn't been as, to use the word, woke at the time, you could still be presenting there, arguably, and you wouldn't have... what I'm saying is the sliding door probably did you a favour. Woke became a friend of yours.
And also I would say that part of the thing I don't like about woke is it tends to wallow in victimhood and self-pity and all that kind of stuff. And I think that what I've illustrated probably with my career is the best response to down moments in your career or life, and you've been through it for yourself, is that you got to actually dust yourself down and do the Rocky Balboa thing, which he, in the famous, I put it in the book, the famous time he has it out with his son when he says, look, life will beat you down and it will keep you down if you let it. The only way to win at life is when it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit, get it back up, and keep moving forward. Whatever you think of Trump, he has shown remarkable resilience and remarkable mental strength.
Your book is called Woke is Dead. It could have been called Woke is on life support.
You know what? Woke is dying, and I want the book to be the final nail in its miserable, joyless little coffin.
Oh my God. Piers, what a way to go out. It's good to see you, and thanks for your time. Piers Morgan. The book's out today. It's called Woke is Dead. It's not boring, I'll tell you that much.